Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there? Or struggled to find the right word, even though it was just on the tip of your tongue? While these little moments happen to all of us, they could also be early whispers of something more serious. Dementia doesn't arrive overnight, it creeps in, slow and subtle, often disguised as ordinary forgetfulness. But what if you could recognize the early signs before it was too late? In today's video, we're going to reveal the 5 lesser-known early symptoms of dementia that most people miss until the damage is already done. If you or a loved one is over 60, this is something you need to see. Subtle language changes. When words start slipping away. It often starts with a pause. A brief, uncomfortable silence as someone reaches for a word they know they should know. Maybe it's the name of a neighbor they see every week, or a simple object like microwave or umbrella. At first, it seems like nothing. We all forget words from time to time, right? But when these pauses become more frequent, when the brain stalls mid-sentence and the person begins using vague substitutes like thingy or that stuff over there, it may be an early sign of dementia, and it's one of the most overlooked. What sets this apart from normal forgetfulness is not just the frequency, but the struggle. The person might try to describe the word instead of saying it, or they may start avoiding conversations altogether to hide their difficulty. According to research published in the journal Neurology, one of the earliest indicators of Alzheimer's disease can be subtle language impairments that worsen over time. This isn't just forgetting a word, it's a breakdown in the connection between language and memory, and it can change the way someone speaks completely. You may notice they start repeating themselves, even in the same conversation. They may substitute similar-sounding words that don't quite fit, like saying mirror when they meant window. Or they'll confuse tenses and prepositions, making their sentences sound jumbled or oddly structured. This isn't just frustrating for them, it can also lead to misunderstandings that isolate them from others. In fact, according to a study by the Alzheimer's Association, language-related changes are among the earliest red flags caregivers report, often years before a formal diagnosis. One particularly telling sign is difficulty following or joining in conversations, especially when there are multiple people talking. The person might zone out or withdraw, no longer able to keep up with the pace. Phone calls can become a nightmare. They rely heavily on verbal cues, and someone with early-stage dementia may struggle without the help of gestures or facial expressions. Another overlooked detail is a growing reliance on written communication. A person who once loved lively conversation may start texting instead of calling, or writing notes instead of speaking directly. These changes can be brushed off as personality shifts or mood issues, but in reality, they may reflect the brain's declining ability to process spoken language. Family members often mistake it for stress, depression, or just aging. But while age-related word-finding difficulty is common, the difference with dementia is that it interferes with daily life. If someone can't follow a recipe because the steps are too language-heavy, or can't tell a story without it completely unraveling, it's time to take notice. Studies using MRI scans have shown that even at the earliest stages, the brain begins to shrink in areas responsible for language processing, especially in the left temporal lobe. That's why these signs can precede memory loss and other cognitive changes. If you're seeing this in yourself or a loved one, it's crucial not to dismiss it. Early detection can make a massive difference in treatment outcomes and planning for the future. There are cognitive therapies, speech-language interventions, and even medications that can help slow the progression, but they're most effective when started early. So the next time someone struggles for a word, listen closely. It could be nothing. Or it could be the first whisper of something that needs your attention. Difficulty with planning or solving problems. Most people associate dementia with memory loss, but one of its earliest warning signs lies in something much subtler: trouble planning or solving problems. Imagine someone who used to balance their checkbook to the cent, now confused by a routine grocery bill. Or a retired engineer suddenly struggling to follow the instructions for assembling a basic shelf. These are not just signs of forgetfulness. They're signals that the brain's executive functions, its internal manager, are beginning to falter. The ability to think abstractly, organize steps, and adjust when something goes wrong is deeply tied to cognitive health, and when dementia starts to take root, these skills are among the first to erode. Planning a meal might become a daunting task. Not because they've forgotten how to cook, but because they can't keep track of what needs to be done first, or how long everything takes. Even multi-step tasks like taking medication on schedule or paying bills on time become unexpectedly complex. According to a 2022 study published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, early-stage dementia patients showed a marked decline in task-switching ability and problem-solving speed, even before memory loss became obvious. This isn't just about missing a few appointments or forgetting to buy milk. It's an inability to anticipate, sequence, and execute tasks that were once second nature. You might notice that the person begins writing more reminders to themselves but still overlooks key steps. Or they might leave tasks half-finished, dishes left in the sink while the dishwasher sits empty, laundry halfway done, or emails left unsent after being started. For some, it manifests in their approach to money. They may overspend, forget to pay essential bills, or fall for scams more easily because they can't critically assess what seems suspicious. Others may get overwhelmed at the idea of planning a simple outing or vacation, something they used to enjoy organizing. The change can be especially jarring if the person had a career that relied heavily on structure and planning. Teachers, managers, accountants, people who once thrived on routine, may suddenly seem scattered or disorganized. And the worst part is, many hide these struggles out of embarrassment, trying to maintain an image of competence while quietly sinking into confusion. The effort to mask these difficulties often leads to fatigue and irritability, and loved ones may misinterpret this as laziness or moodiness. But under the surface is a brain working overtime to manage what once came effortlessly. Caregivers might notice a growing dependence on them for basic decisions. What to eat, when to leave, what route to take. Things the person used to handle on their own now prompt endless questions or hesitation. Another common pattern is becoming rigid in routines. People with early dementia may insist on doing things a certain way or at a certain time, not because they prefer it, but because it's the only structure they can cling to. Deviating from the routine causes them distress, confusion, or even panic. This clinging to predictability is a coping mechanism, not a personality shift. Scientists have found that these issues stem from changes in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic, strategy, and adaptation. When this part of the brain begins to deteriorate, the person loses flexibility in thought and behavior. Early intervention, like cognitive training, puzzles, and memory exercises, can help maintain these executive functions longer. But again, the key is noticing the signs before they escalate. If you or someone close is finding it unusually hard to plan a small trip, solve a minor household problem, or juggle simple tasks, it's time to pay attention. These aren't just signs of getting older. They're possible indicators of something deeper, and catching them early could be the difference between managing the condition and being blindsided by it. Changes in mood or personality that seem out of character. One of the most heartbreaking and least understood early signs of dementia is a sudden or gradual change in mood or personality. Often mistaken for depression, stress, or even a midlife crisis, these emotional shifts can signal that something deeper is going on inside the brain. Imagine someone who has always been upbeat and sociable suddenly becoming withdrawn, irritable, or suspicious. A once patient grandparent now seems easily frustrated by minor inconveniences. A gentle spouse becomes unusually argumentative or anxious for no clear reason. These aren't just mood swings, they're signs that the brain's internal regulator, which manages emotion and behavior, is starting to falter. According to a comprehensive review published in the American Journal of Psychiatry, mood changes often precede memory decline in early Alzheimer's disease, sometimes by several years. The frontal and temporal lobes, areas of the brain responsible for emotional expression and self-control, are among the first regions affected in certain types of dementia. This biological shift can lead to noticeable personality transformations, often confusing or alarming for loved ones. You may notice the person becomes apathetic, losing interest in activities they once loved. A passionate gardener may suddenly let their plants wither. A devoted volunteer stops showing up at their regular charity events. Even favorite TV shows or books no longer spark joy. This isn't simple boredom, it's a neurological change that disrupts motivation and reward pathways. Alternatively, some people may develop increased anxiety or paranoia. They might believe others are stealing from them, or that someone is plotting against them. These delusions often emerge subtly, with comments like "I think someone's been in my room" or "Why did you move my wallet?" escalating into full-blown suspicion. In some cases, a person who was previously shy or reserved may become disinhibited, saying inappropriate things, acting impulsively, or showing poor social judgment. These shifts are not voluntary. The person isn't choosing to be different. Their brain is changing how they experience and express emotion. Family members often misinterpret these signs as psychological issues or dismiss them as quirks of aging. But the difference lies in the consistency and progression. If the change is persistent, worsening, and out of character, it demands attention. In fact, a 2021 study in The Lancet Psychiatry introduced the term mild behavioral impairment to describe these very changes, recognizing them as a precursor to more severe cognitive decline. Some individuals also experience emotional volatility, crying at commercials, laughing at inappropriate times, or swinging between moods without obvious triggers. This emotional instability can strain relationships, as loved ones struggle to understand what's happening. It's crucial not to take it personally, even though it often feels personal. The person may be aware, on some level, that something is wrong, which adds frustration, embarrassment, or fear into the mix. Their responses might seem exaggerated because they're operating with fewer mental tools to cope with everyday stress. Sleep disturbances and restlessness are also common during this phase. A person may pace at night, act restless during the day, or have trouble winding down. While often attributed to insomnia or anxiety, this could actually be early-stage dementia disrupting the body's natural rhythms and emotional regulation. Another telling sign is increased irritability in unfamiliar environments. A quiet lunch at a new cafe might suddenly spark agitation or an outburst, even if there's no clear reason why. These behavioral responses are rooted in an overwhelmed brain struggling to make sense of stimuli it once handled effortlessly. If you or someone you know is exhibiting uncharacteristic emotional shifts, it's not something to brush aside. Keeping a journal of these changes can help spot patterns and provide valuable insight for a healthcare provider. Early recognition of behavioral changes opens the door to earlier diagnosis, access to treatments, and the chance to plan for the future while cognitive abilities are still relatively intact. This is not just about avoiding crisis, it's about preserving dignity, relationships, and quality of life for as long as possible. Struggling with familiar tasks in unfamiliar places. Dementia doesn't always make its presence known through grand gestures of forgetfulness. Sometimes, it reveals itself in the quiet panic of getting lost in a place that should be familiar, or in the blank stare someone gives a device they've used for years. One of the most overlooked but telling early signs is the increasing difficulty with familiar tasks, especially when those tasks are performed outside of a routine setting. A person might know how to make coffee at home but find themselves confused when trying to do the same thing at a friend's house. Or they might be completely confident driving to the grocery store they visit weekly, but suddenly take the wrong exit or forget where they parked. These aren't isolated incidents, they're clues that the brain's ability to adapt learned behaviors to slightly altered environments is deteriorating. According to researchers from the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, one of the earliest cognitive domains affected in dementia is spatial awareness and functional adaptability. The person's brain begins to lose its ability to generalize tasks, meaning they know how to do something in one context but become disoriented when even a small part of that context changes. A retired teacher may sit down to help a grandchild with math homework but become flustered by new methods or layouts in the textbook. A home cook may be unable to prepare a simple recipe when ingredients are stored in unfamiliar cabinets. These moments are often dismissed as harmless lapses or chalked up to aging, but the pattern of confusion grows over time. For example, someone might forget how to use an ATM machine they've been using for years, not because the machine changed, but because their brain can no longer recall the sequence of actions in the proper order. Another red flag is difficulty navigating public transportation. Buses, subways, or even ride-share apps become overwhelming, not because the person is unfamiliar with the system, but because the cognitive flexibility required to adapt to changing platforms, routes, or delays has been compromised. These experiences can lead to embarrassment and a gradual withdrawal from activities that once brought joy. Instead of going to new places or meeting friends at unfamiliar restaurants, the person begins to isolate themselves, sticking to routines and locations they feel safe in. But this shrinking of one's world isn't about preference. It's about fear of failing at the basic tasks they used to do effortlessly. Studies have shown that people with early-stage dementia often reduce their activity levels due to these quiet struggles, which only accelerates cognitive decline by depriving the brain of stimulation. Even tasks like dressing can be affected. While they may be fine at home, choosing the right outfit for a doctor's visit or church service in an unfamiliar place may cause distress or confusion. They might layer clothes inappropriately or forget important accessories. In more advanced early stages, they may even begin to need help choosing the correct settings on the microwave or TV remote when staying in someone else's house. You may notice that written checklists or verbal instructions don't seem to help. It's not about memory alone, it's about execution. They may read the steps and still not be able to put them together into a logical action plan. Occupational therapists often use a test called the Executive Function Performance Test to assess exactly this: how well someone performs familiar tasks in slightly unfamiliar settings. This kind of assessment helps differentiate between normal aging and the more concerning decline seen in dementia. If these patterns are emerging, it's important not to ignore them. Instead of correcting or criticizing the person, gently offer support while tracking changes. Intervening early means that assistive tools, like visual prompts, simplified instructions, or memory aids, can still be learned and adopted effectively. What seems like a small slip in function could be the first warning sign that the brain is struggling to maintain autonomy in a changing world. The key is recognizing the pattern and acting while there's still time to make a difference. Poor judgment and risky decisions. One of the more subtle yet serious early signs of dementia is a noticeable decline in judgment. It's not just about making a mistake or acting impulsively once in a while, everyone does that. It's about repeated, out-of-character decisions that reflect a deeper disruption in the brain's ability to assess risk, predict consequences, and navigate complex social or financial situations. Picture someone who's always been financially cautious suddenly giving large sums of money to telemarketers, or someone who once dressed impeccably now stepping out in mismatched shoes and a light jacket on a freezing day. These aren't harmless quirks, they're signs that the mental filters we all rely on to guide behavior and ensure safety are beginning to break down. The part of the brain most affected in this case is the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and reasoning. When dementia begins to take hold here, it erodes the person's ability to make sound judgments, often in ways that go unnoticed until something goes seriously wrong. A person may leave the stove on and walk away, convinced they turned it off. They might attempt to drive to a familiar place but ignore traffic rules or miss stop signs, putting themselves and others at risk. And perhaps most concerning, they may trust people who are clearly manipulating them while rejecting the concerns of those genuinely trying to help. Research published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease has shown that poor financial decision-making is often one of the earliest markers of cognitive impairment, sometimes emerging years before a formal diagnosis. These decisions can lead to a cascade of consequences: unpaid bills, overdraft fees, misplaced trust, or even legal trouble. Sadly, many of these individuals become easy targets for scams, and their declining ability to recognize red flags means they may keep secrets out of embarrassment or denial. Friends and family often notice these signs too late, when irreversible damage has already been done. Beyond money, judgment issues also show up in how a person treats others. They may start making inappropriate comments or behaving rudely in public, unaware that their words are offensive or out of place. Or they might fail to read social cues, ignoring someone's discomfort or missing when a situation requires empathy. In some cases, they take on activities that are physically dangerous, climbing ladders, wandering into traffic, handling hot pots, without recognizing the risks involved. They may also demonstrate poor judgment in healthcare decisions, refusing necessary treatments or taking medications incorrectly despite clear instructions. This deterioration in decision-making is gradual but relentless. At first, it might look like forgetfulness or eccentricity, but over time, the consequences grow more serious and the frequency increases. Caregivers often report being bewildered by the person's refusal to follow safety guidelines, or their stubborn insistence on doing things their way even when it's no longer safe or logical. These aren't just stubborn behaviors, they reflect a breakdown in the brain's reasoning center. It's also common for people with early dementia to lack insight into their poor judgment, which means they may not even realize anything is wrong. This condition, known as anosognosia, can make it difficult to convince the person to seek help or accept assistance. They may accuse loved ones of being controlling or overreacting, further straining relationships. To spot this sign early, experts recommend looking at the pattern rather than isolated incidents. Is the person showing a consistent decline in sound judgment across multiple areas? Finances, safety, social interactions? Are their decisions increasingly out of step with their usual personality or values? If so, it's time to take note. Early intervention is possible, but only when the signs are acknowledged and addressed. Medical professionals can perform cognitive assessments specifically designed to test judgment and decision-making, which can help confirm whether further evaluation is necessary. Technology can also offer some support. Smart devices, automated reminders, and financial oversight tools can provide guardrails. But no tool is more powerful than awareness. When poor judgment begins to appear, it's not just a sign of aging, it's a signal from the brain that it's losing its grip on rational thinking. Recognizing and responding to it could prevent a crisis and offer a chance at better, safer living for years to come. What to do if you notice these signs? Steps to take now. Noticing the early signs of dementia can be a deeply emotional and unsettling experience, whether it's happening to you or someone you love. But recognizing the symptoms early isn't a sentence, it's a signal, and what you do next can make a profound difference. The first and most important step is to resist denial. It's natural to want to explain away changes in memory, judgment, language, or mood as simply aging or stress, but early action is the most powerful tool you have. Start by documenting what you're seeing. Keep a daily or weekly log of specific incidents, missed appointments, unusual purchases, emotional outbursts, or moments of confusion. This log becomes a critical resource when speaking with healthcare professionals. General observations are helpful, but concrete examples can highlight patterns and make it easier for a doctor to evaluate whether what you're seeing falls within the range of normal aging or points toward cognitive decline. The next step is to schedule a comprehensive medical evaluation. Not just a quick checkup, but a full cognitive assessment that includes memory tests, executive function tasks, language fluency, and, if possible, neuroimaging. Many primary care physicians can initiate this process, but a referral to a neurologist or a memory clinic may be necessary for a more detailed workup. It's important to rule out other conditions that can mimic dementia, such as vitamin B12 deficiency, thyroid disorders, depression, or side effects from certain medications. These issues are often treatable, and catching them early could mean reversing the symptoms entirely. If the diagnosis is confirmed, the path forward may feel overwhelming, but there are powerful steps that can help maintain quality of life. One of the most beneficial interventions is cognitive stimulation. This includes puzzles, memory games, reading, writing, and learning new skills, anything that challenges the brain in a way that's still enjoyable. Social interaction is just as vital. According to the Alzheimer's Society, loneliness and isolation can significantly speed up cognitive decline. Encourage participation in group activities, regular phone calls with friends, or local senior programs. Physical exercise also plays a critical role. Studies show that just 30 minutes of moderate activity a few times a week can improve blood flow to the brain and support neural health. Combined with a Mediterranean-style diet rich in leafy greens, berries, nuts, and healthy fats, lifestyle changes can slow the progression of symptoms. Medication may also be an option. While there is no cure for dementia, certain drugs can help manage symptoms or delay decline in the early stages. These include cholinesterase inhibitors like donepezil or rivastigmine, which help regulate neurotransmitters involved in memory and cognition. New treatments, including monoclonal antibodies targeting amyloid plaques, are also emerging, offering fresh hope, but they are most effective when started early. It's equally important to prepare for the future while decision-making abilities are still intact. Legal planning is not a sign of giving up, it's an act of empowerment. Establishing a healthcare power of attorney, financial proxy, and living will ensure that the person's preferences are respected later on. These steps protect autonomy and reduce stress on family members down the line. Emotional support for both the person experiencing symptoms and their loved ones cannot be overlooked. Counseling, support groups, and education programs provide spaces to process feelings, learn coping skills, and stay connected to a community of people who understand what you're going through. And finally, maintain hope. While dementia is a challenging diagnosis, early detection opens up a window of time where individuals can make meaningful choices, enjoy fulfilling moments, and engage with life in a way that matters. It's not about what is lost, it's about protecting what remains and nurturing it with care, awareness, and love. If you've noticed any of the signs discussed today, subtle language changes, difficulty solving problems, mood shifts, confusion in familiar tasks, or poor judgment, don't wait. Take the next step. Talk to a doctor, reach out to a loved one, or begin tracking the patterns. Because when it comes to dementia, the earlier you act, the more you can do. Knowledge is the beginning of power, and power begins with paying attention.